Everything went against the Denver Broncos in Week 16. The Broncos could have clinched a playoff spot last Thursday with a win, but they fell to the Los Angeles Chargers 34-27. After that, Denver could still have clinched on Sunday if the Miami Dolphins, Cincinnati Bengals, and Indianapolis Colts all lost or tied their games. But all three teams won and improved to 7-8. So now the question is, what is the simpler path for the Broncos to make in the playoff? Let's explore all the scenarios. What's up, buddies? Welcome back. If you are new here, make sure you hit the subscribe button. We cover all AFC West news here on this channel. Look, when you're analyzing football, you have to put things in perspective. Life is bigger than a lost game. But as an NFL analyst, I've got to say this Broncos defeat is particularly painful because of how it played out. The team completely collapsed at a critical moment. They had full control of the game in the first half, were dictating the pace, but then suffered a total meltdown after halftime. Now, this defeat is painful, but give credit where it's due. Sean Payton, Bo Nix, and this Broncos team have brought excitement back to Denver football. After 2016, they will finish the season with a winning record, even if they don't qualify for the playoffs. But that's exactly what makes this loss so disappointing. When you finally get that golden opportunity and let it slip through your fingers, it hurts. If they had won against the Chargers in Week 16 and dropped the game against Cincinnati or Kansas City, things might have become easy. But now, they're backed into a corner, needing to beat one of two tough opponents coming up. They had their chance right in front of them and couldn't capitalize. That's why everyone's frustrated. First, let's break it down what went wrong. The defense struggled mightily, giving up chunk plays and big gains when they needed stops. Sean Payton's second-half play calling wasn't up to par. Bo Nix had his moments, showed some good things, but elite quarterbacks make those crucial plays when the game is on the line. Last night's game had plenty of other issues too, but if I had to pick the biggest factor that cost the Broncos, it was the decision to accept being flexed into Thursday Night Football. This was historic, the first time a team has ever been flexed into a Thursday game. And there's a reason players have been against these games for years. The quick turnaround is brutal. Players don't have enough time to recover physically or prepare mentally. Early in the game, the Broncos looked solid, but as it went on, you could see the wear and tear. These young players started to run out of steam. With a few extra days of rest, maybe Jaleel McLaughlin is healthy, or Riley Moss is ready. Better recovery time would have allowed for sharper game plans and halftime adjustments. Playing on Thursday not only takes a physical toll, but also disrupts the entire preparation process. And this wasn't their first Thursday night game of the season, which only added to the strain. What stood out to me was Sean Payton's post-game press conference. He talked about his defense struggling and blamed the short week. But here's the thing. You can't use the short week excuse when you agreed to it. Then Benito went to the podium and mentioned how hard the 3-day turnaround was on their bodies, saying they needed more rest. Adam Troutman was asked about flexing into this Thursday game, and his response was telling. He basically said, "That's just Sean, he's got that swagger. Always wants the big stage." But let's be real. Many of us didn't like this decision when it was made, and now the results speak for themselves. The Broncos entered this game with a 92% playoff probability after that impressive win in Indianapolis. Despite the loss, the Broncos still maintain a strong 82% chance of making the playoffs. However, the bigger concern isn't just making it, it's their likely playoff position. Instead of a more favorable matchup, they're probably heading to Buffalo. What's worrying is that we're now saying we think they'll make the playoffs rather than being certain. A win here would have locked everything up. The NFL is unpredictable, and now the Broncos have put themselves in a tough spot when they could have secured their place with a victory. That's why this loss hurts more than usual. Now they're heading to Cincinnati as underdogs against a Bengals team that's won back-to-back games, with an offense that's really clicking. Looking at how the Broncos defense has performed in December, there's real concern about their ability to contain Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins. This isn't the same defensive unit we saw dominating through the first 3 months of the season. Now back to the playoff picture. If the Broncos lose both upcoming games, they still have a 52% chance of making the playoffs, according to the New York Times and The Athletic. But that's barely better than a coin flip and way too close for comfort. Now let me explain each scenario individually. Denver Broncos are currently sitting at 7th seed in the playoff race, tied with the Chargers. Both are at 9-6. The Broncos are facing the Cincinnati Bengals in the upcoming week, a team who is also desperate to stay in the hunt, followed by the Kansas City Chiefs, who are looking to lock up the AFC's top seed. A win in either game would clinch a playoff berth. The Bengals are also 7-8, and their road to the playoffs is among the toughest. First, they host the Broncos in a do-or-die game. Any one of these teams who win this game will move to the playoffs if the other playoff contenders lose their match. Then they will move to Pittsburgh to face the Steelers, who are currently tied with the Baltimore Ravens, and their schedule is also not easy as they will face City Chiefs in Week 18. The Bengals need to win both games to finish 9-8 and stay in contention. A loss in either matchup could spell the end of their season. Then we have the Colts in a similar position at 7-8, and they have the easiest schedule among the contenders. They'll face the Giants and Jaguars, both teams with losing records. If the Colts win both games, they'll finish 9-8. Miami Dolphins are also at 7-8. Their schedule works in their favor, like the Colts with matchups against the Browns and the Jets, both struggling teams. Winning out would get them to 9-8, but their fate doesn't rest entirely in their hands. They'll need teams like the Broncos and Colts to slip up to have a real shot. Then we have the Chargers, who are also sitting at currently 9-6. Their remaining schedule is quite easy. They will face the Patriots next week and then the Raiders in Week 18, both with the losing record. Now, with so many teams potentially finishing at 9-8, tiebreakers will play a significant role in determining who makes it to the playoffs. Head-to-head results, divisional records, and conference standings will come into play. Now, if we assume that all 4 teams close their regular season at 9-8, it means the Bengals will get a win over the Broncos. Then the Colts have an advantage over the Dolphins, the Bengals, and the Broncos. So the Broncos versus Bengals game is a pivotal one. A win for either team could drastically alter the playoff picture. Meanwhile, the Dolphins and Colts need to capitalize on their favorable schedules to stay in the mix. The pressure is on, and every game now feels like a playoff game for these teams. The next 2 weeks will decide who survives and who falls short. So, to make it simple for the Broncos, they must win against either Cincinnati or Kansas City to avoid relying on other teams' outcomes. That loss to the Chargers looms large. Some experts debate whether the Colts game or the Chargers loss was more critical. But here's an interesting twist. The Broncos' playoff chances are higher than if they had lost to Indianapolis and beaten Los Angeles. For the Broncos, what is more worrying as we look ahead, they face Cincinnati and Kansas City next, both teams with elite quarterbacks. And when you break it down, the Broncos haven't done well against top-tier quarterbacks this season. They've lost to Geno Smith, Justin Fields, Herbert twice, and Lamar Jackson, and their only win against a team with a winning record came against Baker Mayfield back in September. They've beaten quarterbacks like Aiden O'Connell, Spencer Rattler, Bryce Young, and Kirk Cousins, guys who either haven't performed well or might not even be starting next year. Now they head to Cincinnati to face a playoff-hungry team led by Joe Burrow, a top-5 quarterback. After that, it's likely a showdown with Mahomes in freezing weather. And that wraps up the breakdown of the intense AFC playoff race. The next 2 weeks are going to be a nail-biter as teams fight to secure their postseason dreams. But now it's your turn. What do you think? Which team has the best shot at making it into the playoffs? Do you think the Broncos can survive their brutal schedule? Or will the Dolphins and Colts capitalize on their easier matchups to sneak in? And let's not forget the Bengals. Can they pull off 2 clutch wins to keep their season alive? Drop your predictions in the comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more in-depth NFL analysis and playoff updates. Stay tuned, and we'll catch you in the next one.